There seems to be a lot of hoopla flying around the internet lately talking about the cost of living in Thailand. Now, especially on YouTube, there's some creators, I'm not going to point fingers, but they're kind of on both sides of it. I feel like $1,000 a month is usually the benchmark. There's creators saying on one side of it that you just cannot do it. $1,000 a month is not realistic. And then there's creators on the other side who are saying you can do whatever you want and you can have this crazy, lavish life for $1,000 a month. Today, I'm gonna nail that down for you a little bit. In this video, we're gonna be Pattaya specific. Of course, going to different places, things are gonna be different prices, especially housing is the big one that's gonna really depend on where you are in Thailand. Day to day can be a little more expensive in some places, especially with one realm that we're gonna talk about later, but we're gonna break it down into 5 parts. We're gonna go over housing, food, kind of entertainment, activities slash hobbies, and then if you want to do any traveling while you're in Thailand, or maybe you want to hop around Southeast Asia a little bit more. We're going to pick apart each one of those in this video, and by the end of it, you will have a better idea on what $1,000 a month will get you in Pattaya. So right off the rip, can you live in Pattaya for $1,000 US, $1,000 a month? Absolutely. I have done it on less, I have done it on more. You're gonna have to budget down on some things, but you might be surprised what you can actually get. So the first thing that we'll talk about is food. For $1,000 a month, you're not gonna be able to go to fancy steakhouses multiple times a week. You're not gonna be going grocery shopping and buying all the steaks and beef and things like that. But if you enjoy Thai food and if you enjoy the markets, $1,000 a month, you can really put aside a decent budget for food. Now, when it comes to cooking at home, depending on what you're cooking, generally, it's not gonna be much cheaper than if you went to kind of a local Thai spot or maybe one of the markets. Now, it really depends on where you're going to, even the Thai spots. If you are on the beach in the spots that are more frequented by people, of course, they're gonna be a little bit more expensive. But if you get off the beaten path, you'll be able to get a little more bang for your buck. Food-wise, you'll be able to go out every once in a while, have a fancy place, maybe a few times a month, but you're gonna have to pay attention to how much you're spending. And by the way, this budget is for one person. If you have even a girlfriend or family, it's gonna be much different, but this pertains if maybe you're a single guy coming to Thailand. That's the realm we're talking about. The next thing for $1,000 a month, if you want to go do some hobbies or maybe activities, if you want to go out and play golf a few times, or maybe you want to go ride one of the jet skis around every once in a while, you could totally do that. It all depends on what you budget down and what you budget up. If you want to have more money to go do fun stuff and go run around, then you can budget your food back a little bit, or maybe your housing, like we'll talk about later. But for $1,000 a month, you can definitely afford to run around and do some stuff, maybe afford some date nights every once in a while. But just like everything else we're going to talk on this list, you won't really have the opportunity to do it every day. But especially if you shop around for some coupons and things like that, you'll be able to figure out maybe once or twice a week. So the next one is definitely a major one. It can chew through the majority of your $1,000 budget, or you could actually save quite a bit, and that has to do with housing. Now, I really only know about the condo market. I don't really know too much about actual houses. I have looked at a few villas and things like that, and honestly, most of those are probably gonna be out of your budget if you're on $1,000 a month. But just for reference, I looked up a place within 5 minutes earlier when I was getting ready to make this video, and I found a spot in Pattaya, closer to Jomtien actually. 8,500 baht a month, which is about $250. I'll throw up some pictures on screen for reference right now. I think it's a good idea to maybe prep about a third of your budget, so about 300 bucks for electricity and your condo. Electricity is gonna be super cheap unless you're running your aircon all the time. So for 250 bucks a month, you can get a nice condo. Of course, if you go to a place that's a little more off the beaten path, it's gonna be a little bit cheaper for a nicer condo. But for $200 to $300 a month, you might be really surprised about some of the spots you can get. Now, are you gonna be able to find anything in that price range that's gonna impress that Instagram model that you see in Dubai every other week? Probably not, but it'll at least be clean. You'll have a pool, you'll more than likely have a gym. And if you do some real hunting, you can actually find a really nice spot for this budget. next thing is one that I kind of forgot about when I was making my budget. I thought about it a little bit, but I didn't really plan because honestly, I didn't really have an idea of how much it was going to cost me. I didn't know how it really worked here. And that has to do with transportation. So if you want to do some hobbies, like we said earlier, you're going to need to run around town a little bit more. Unless you're on one of the bus routes or anything like that, you're going to have to pay for taxis. Maybe you're going to need a bike. But these are both totally doable, especially if you got a little bit of extra money put aside to buy a bike when you get here. You can definitely pay for fuel and insurance and all that stuff on a $1,000 budget, no problem. And even with taxis, minus if you're going to Bangkok or maybe south to some of the islands or something, but if you're just running around town a few days a week, taxis, you're probably not even gonna really notice it in your budget. Maybe 300 or 400 baht per week. Now, of course, this gets more expensive during holidays and things like that. But for the most part, transportation is really cheap here. So it really just depends on which way you wanna go about it, whether you wanna buy your own or whether you wanna take taxis, or if you're on the bus route, it's super easy. It's 10 baht per ride. And you can really get a lot of places with it. Side note, does anybody really feel like it's 2024? I'm notorious for writing last year's date on everything until November of that year, and I start to get it right and then it switches again. Or if you guys made any New Year's resolutions, let me know what they are down in the comments, and hopefully by today's the 3rd, right? You should still be sticking with it, hopefully. I made 2 and I'm actually holding strong so far, but in all reality, talk to me in a month or 2 and we'll see. I'll be happy if I stick with one of them. A big one that I feel like a lot of people are gonna wanna do, especially when they first get to Thailand, you're probably gonna wanna travel around a little bit more. If you're traveling in Thailand, this is relatively doable, even with a $1,000 a month budget. We said maybe you budget down on your condo a little bit and you can put that money to the side for trips. But I mean, realistically, you're looking at $150 to $200 plane tickets for pretty much anywhere in Thailand. Or maybe if you wanna stay close to Pattaya, run into Bangkok for the weekend, or maybe you wanna go south to some islands, go to Koh Samet, something like that. You can really budget for it. You're gonna have to save and pay attention to how much it's gonna cost, and you're gonna have to kind of be a cheap ass about it, but you can definitely figure it out. Now, granted, you're not gonna be hopping to Fiji or Turks and Caicos anytime soon on that budget, but you can still get out of town and enjoy yourself a little bit within reason. Now, if you're planning on coming to Pattaya, I'm guessing this one probably has a big reason, or at least a part of why you want to come here. And that has to do with nightlife / entertainment, I guess. How much can you get for $1,000 a month? Well, if this is a priority for you, we said earlier about everything else, you might have to budget back on some other stuff. You might have to not go to those fancy restaurants or places like that, or you might have to forego some trips to put aside a little bit of party money. But for even $1,000 a month, now granted, you're not gonna be at the club every other night popping bottles and being crazy, but in all reality, nightlife is so much cheaper here, you can kind of just wing it with that budget. Now, if you have no interest in this, if you're not a drinker, congratulations, you're gonna save a lot of money and be able to spend that everywhere else. Granted, it is much cheaper than partying in America. If it's something you're doing often here, it's gonna be pretty much the highest part of your budget. You can talk to anybody here that does partake, myself included, for a long time. That was by far the biggest part of my budget, was beers and bottles, going to the club, going to the bars. And even if you're a light drinker, I guess you could say, if you're not really interested in clubs and bottles and things like that, but maybe you wanna go out every once in a while, shoot some pool, have a few beers, this is totally doable. I mean, realistically, if you're only a 3 or 4 beer type guy, you can go out. It's gonna cost you maybe 500 baht for the night with a taxi. Especially if you're over here in Jomtien, those type of spots, the chill beer / pool bars are way cheaper than in Pattaya. But if you're planning on going to Walking Street and going down there and getting involved in that debauchery, it's gonna cost you a little bit more. But my rule of thumb is I only take with me what I'm willing to spend, and that way you don't wake up in the morning and have one of those oh shit moments. So in conclusion, can you live in Pattaya specifically for $1,000 a month? 100%. It's gonna be a budget where you're gonna have to pay attention to what you're spending, but if you're pretty reasonable with everything, you're not gonna have to budget down too hard on anything, and it's 100% doable. I've had months where I spent less than that. Honestly, I've had some months that were $700 to $800. Now, I don't recommend coming with that much in mind because things happen, or you might have a month where you want to go do more, you're getting a little bit stir crazy. But if there's ever a month where maybe you're a little bit short, you can definitely budget down to that department, but you're just going to be surviving at that point. You're not going to be going out, you're not going to be having beers, you're going to have enough food to eat and pay your bills. That's pretty much it. Now on the other side, is $1,000 a month gonna have you living like a king and having this crazy lavish life? Realistically, probably not. Now, of course, that $1,000 is gonna get you much more here than it would in America, but there's kind of this rhetoric that, oh, well, all you have to do is make $1,000 a month and you'll live like a king and you'll never have to worry about money again. I don't think that's necessarily true. You'll still have to pay attention to what you're spending. You can't just go out and go willy-nilly and not worry about anything on $1,000 a month. Thank you guys for tuning into another video. Hopefully this answered some questions for you if you're planning on moving to Thailand. If you would like to learn a little bit more about the cost of living in Thailand, I'll go ahead and link another video for you here on the end screen. And like we always say, I hope you guys have a great day. We'll catch you in the next one.